ties in beautifully with the sermon today, so I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Before we go any further, could we just please join me as I say a word of prayer. Dear God, Father, again it's come to that time where I would like to speak to your people. And because they are your people, Lord, I'm asking you to give me the words. I have prepared a sermon. I put things that I think might be right to say to your people, Lord, but even at this late stage, if there's substance in there that's not right, please take it out. And if there's things that I have omitted, oh Lord, please bring back to memory that I might include. My prayer is that all of us today may be blessed. We ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Good afternoon, brothers and sisters.
Good afternoon.
As I was leaving home this morning, I was speaking to Gigi, and I said, you do realize that this would be the very first time that I'll actually preach, and you won't be in the back over there. And she said, yeah, that's true. I thought, that would be a different experience. So normally I can look up and she can kind of direct me if I'm going on for too long. So today, you're just in God's hands. Chichi sends her greetings. She's at home. She would have loved to be here, and you will see her very soon. She sends her greetings. She's doing well. Miriam is keeping her honest. She's doing well as well. And I just want to use this opportunity to say thank you to all those who have supported us. It's been quite difficult. When Matthew was born, Chichi's mum was here, as you all know, and it made life a lot easier. But this time it's the real thing. It's not easy, I assure you that. So, yes, she does send her greetings, and I just want to say thank you. You know who you are. I'm not going to mention names, but you know who you are. You've been very supportive, and we do appreciate it. May God bless you. Does anybody remember last Sabbath's sermon? What was the title?
The Godhead.
Sorry?
3, 2, 1.
I'm hearing voices. The Godhead. Thank you. Thank you. I asked this question because if you don't remember what was said last Sabbath, the chances are you're not going to remember what I'm about to say today. So I always want to make sure that the church are listening and we're not just here to make up the numbers. Yes. Again, I was speaking to Chichi last Sabbath when I got home, and I wasn't here during the week, and I understand those that were here were absolutely blessed, and we praise God for Elder Ngirishi's ministry. I find him to be a very humble and forthright man who the Lord is using. But I have one problem with him. Everything that I wanted to say, he's already said it. So I say problem, it's not a problem. But when I got home, I said to her, I don't even know what to say anymore now, because everything that I could have said, he's already said it. So I'm only going to come here and repeat word for word what he's already said. So I started thinking, I said, well, God, you're just going to have to give me the words to speak to your people, because I just don't know what to say. But then, during the week, as I did devotion and we do our Bible study, I came across Noah. And I recognized that Noah preached the same message for 120 years, day in, day out. The message didn't change. And the message was simply, it's going to rain, get in the ark. That was his message. He wasn't talking about Jesus coming soon or anything like that. It was a very simple message, and it was a repetitive message. So if you do see me use some of the quotations that were used last week, please just bear with me. The message is the same. the message doesn't change. God says he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I believe that we're living in a time in the world's history in which I definitely believe we do not have long to go now before we hear the sound of the trumpets. The Bible is the undisputed word of God. And I would like us to turn to the Bible. I'd like us to go back to our scripture reading this morning, which was taken from Proverbs chapter 14, verse 12. And it reads like this: There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. This verse will be the basic framework of the message this morning. This verse is telling us that there are choices we make as human beings that might seem right at the time, but the end is that of destruction. The choices we make will determine our destiny. There is a basic law in nature that says we reap what we sow. Now, even non-believers believe that saying. Choices have consequences. So this morning, I want us to take a microscopic look at a character in the Bible who made a wrong choice. The Bible actually refers to this man as a righteous man. But this man made one wrong choice, and the consequences were catastrophic for the rest of his life. The Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 11, Now all these things happened unto them for examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the end of the world are come. Now this scripture is basically telling us that we that live at the end of the world, we are to learn from the mistakes of individuals of the past. And I'm hoping that we can learn from the mistake of this particular character. Now let me just ask you a question. If I were to say to you, name one righteous person in the Bible, who would come to mind? Abraham? Sorry? Job? Moses?
Noah.
Sorry?
Noah.
Noah? Absolutely. Daniel? David? Okay, that's enough. We've got the names. Sorry? Enoch? That's another person. But I want to show us something. Can we turn our Bibles to 2 Peter chapter 2? 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 6 to 8. And I'll read 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 6 to 8. And turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an example unto those that after should live ungodly, and delivered just Lot, vexed with filthy conversations of the wicked. For that righteous man, dwelling among them, in seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. The Bible is telling us that Lot is a righteous man. Nobody mentioned Lot. The normal names came up: Adam, Noah, Abraham, but nobody mentioned Lot. And the Bible is telling us that Lot was a righteous man. You see, it says God delivered just Lot. Now, we know that God didn't deliver just Lot. So when the Bible says God delivered just Lot, what he's saying is righteous Lot, as in Lot was just. It also goes on to say 2 other times that Lot was a righteous man. Lot did not approve of the wicked ways of the people of Sodom. 3 times the Bible refers to him as righteous. Righteous Lot was like a modern day Christian working among non-believers. He hated the way they did business. He hated the lies. the backbiting, the backstabbing, the deceit, the cursing, the taking of the Lord's name in vain. The Bible tells us his righteous soul was vexed. Lot was upset. Even though he was living in Sodom, he didn't approve of their ways. Now we know that Lot was righteous because when Abraham asked God not to destroy Sodom if there were 50 righteous people, God could not find 50 righteous people. Eventually, he got it down to 10 after a lot of back and forth. And God could not find 10 people, but we know that Lot was delivered. So Lot was a righteous man. We also know he was righteous because when the two angels appeared to him disguised as men, the men of Sodom wanted to have inappropriate relations with these angels. They didn't know they were angels, they thought they were men. Lot would have none of it. In fact, out of sheer desperation that no harm should come upon these men, he was willing to offer his two precious daughters instead. Think of that for a minute. Righteous Lot would rather subject himself and his family to pain than cause innocent people to suffer. This is an act of somebody who puts others first. We know he was righteous because he managed to raise two virgin daughters in an immoral city. Lot was a righteous man, yet it does not cross our minds when we list the people who are considered righteous in the Bible. I want us to turn our Bibles to Genesis chapter 19. We're going to spend a bit of time in Genesis chapter 19. And if we can start from verse 12. Genesis chapter 19, verse 12. And I'll read. And the men said unto Lot, Hast thou here besides son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city? Bring them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxen great before the face of the Lord. And the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. Verse 14. And Lot went out, and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, Up get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. We'll stop there for now. You see, these men who were angels appeared to Lot and asked him if he had any other family besides his son-in-law and his daughters, because if he did, he should advise them straight away of the impending doom that was about to befall Sodom. Righteous Lot immediately went out to speak to his sons-in-laws and their wives to advise them that God intended to destroy the city. The Bible then goes on to tell us in verse 14 that he seemed as one who mocked. In other words, they did not believe him. They thought he wasn't serious. They probably thought, here we go again, righteous Lot, telling us that this place was going to be destroyed. Why would God want to destroy such a prosperous city anyway? The popular preachers of Sodom were probably saying a loving God would never destroy this city. For whatever reasons, the sons-in-law did not believe what Lot told them. Let's continue in chapter 19. I'm trying to establish a principle. So let's continue in chapter 19, verse 15. And it says, verse 15, and I'll read. And when the morning arose, the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy two daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And when he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his two daughters, the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth, and set him without the city. So, what are we reading here? In verse 15, we are told that in the morning the angels told Lot to get up and take his wife and two daughters out of the city. Verse 16 tells us he lingered. Lot lingered. And the angels literally had to drag him and his wife and his two daughters out of the city. Please note, Lot lingered. Even after the angels had told him to arise and leave. This is very significant. We'll come back to the lingering point in a minute. Let's continue. Same chapter. Chapter 19, we're now at verse 24. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities, and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. I'll stop there for now. So here you see, God totally destroyed and wiped out everything. Among the dead was Lot's older daughters, his sons-in-law. His business was destroyed, his home gone, everything he owned, all in the space of gone. Everything he owned, all in the space of one day. See, sometimes we gloss over this, but stop to think about it. In that one day, everything that Lot had owned was wiped out. See, I've never lost a child, but I've lost a nephew, and I know the pain it brings. So I can only imagine what Lot was going through when he lost everything overnight. But that's not all he lost. When you go to verse 26 of the same chapter, it says, "But his wife looked back from behind, and she became a pillar of salt." Lot also lost his wife. I mentioned lingering earlier. Let me show you something regarding the death of Mrs. Lot. I've often thought that Mrs. Lot was solely responsible for her death. But Sister White says this, and I'll read it. "If Lot himself had manifested no hesitancy to obey the angel's warning, but had earnestly fled towards the mountain without one word of pleading or remonstrance, his wife also would have made her escape. The influence of his example would have saved her from the sin that sealed her doom." Underline this bit. "But his hesitancy and delay caused her to lightly regard the divine warning." So not only did Lot lose his wife, he was partially responsible for the loss of his wife. If he had not shown hesitancy and lingered, the story of Mrs. Lot would be told differently today. Our actions can sometimes have a detrimental effect on others that are around us, especially those closest to us. If we as Christians don't take the word of God seriously when God speaks to us through his word, then how can we with a straight face try and tell others about the word of God? But Lot's losses didn't stop here. If you read verse 30, same chapter. "And Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his two daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his two daughters." So here's Lot, a man who was used to the bright lights of the city, with all the latest technology and the latest gadgets, now has to start living life like a primitive caveman. He was now a homeless man, living in a cave with his two daughters. In today's language, some would say he was living like a tramp. But it doesn't stop there. It gets even worse for Lot. And we'll look at verse 31. We'll read 31 to 36, and I'll read this for the purpose of time. "And the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the morrow, that the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father, let us make him drink wine this night also. Go thou in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father." See, while they were hiding in the cave, the seed that was sown in Sodom sprang up. These two girls realized that living in a cave meant that access to eligible young bachelors looking to marry them was virtually impossible. They could not stand the idea of not having children of their own, so they hatched a plan. They did what the popular culture of Sodom taught them at that time. They decided to get their father drunk by giving him wine to drink. I'm not quite sure how they managed to get him to drink the wine. Maybe they put it in his food. Maybe they disguised it in a soft drink. I don't know. But the Bible tells us. What we do know is that these girls literally drugged their father, and in the language of today, they raped their father. Not once, but twice. Thus Lot was known as the hopeless man that had children by his own daughters. He became a symbol of disgrace. Righteous Lot. This all happened to Lot because of one bad choice he made in his life. Lot lost his wife, lost his daughters, his sons-in-law, his business, his home, reduced to a primitive caveman, and for the remainder of his life, his self-respect. There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Now, why did Lot have to suffer so much? Because of one fatal choice that he had made years before. At the time of making that choice, it seemed the right choice to Lot. In Genesis chapter 13, if we go to Genesis chapter 13, let's start from verse 7. And I'll read Genesis chapter 13, verse 7. And there was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle, and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanites and the Perizzites dwelled then in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we are brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right, then I will go to the left. We'll stop there for now. So we see a quarrel between Abraham's servants and Lot's servants. Abraham didn't want any strife with his nephew. So he says, the land is before us. Let's go our separate ways. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. You see, right there, when that occurred, what Lot should have done, he should have said to his servants, stand down. That's my uncle. Whatever he says is law. Everything that Lot had, he owed to Abraham. But he didn't do that. Or he could have said to his uncle Abraham, you know what, uncle? You choose. But again, he didn't do that. In verse 10, same chapter 13, let's read. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose, that's a key word, Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan. And Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves, the one from another. Abraham dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. See, Lot decided in what he perceived to be the best part of the land, he would take that for himself. That was a choice he made. You see, Sodom was a businessman's dream. It was a place of commerce and profits. All the major banks, they were in Sodom. The latest technology, innovation was in Sodom. It had the bright lights, the best schools, the best university. Sodom was a fun place, a place of enjoyment, a place of entertainment, the best cinemas, the best hotels. Sodom would have been comparable with any of the cities we have today, be it London, New York, Los Angeles. It was a place everyone wanted to go to. It was a popular tourist attraction. They had everything in Sodom. the annual Sodom and Gomorrah Pride March. The LGBTQ were very active in Sodom. Music was in Sodom. Hip-hop, jazz, rock and roll, reggae, whatever you wanted, it was available in Sodom. Even the church in Sodom had its own brand of jazz music, masquerading as praise worship. Whatever you wanted could be found in Sodom. And of course, there was sex in Sodom. Different kind of sex. Sex before marriage was no longer fornication. It was called cohabiting. Sex outside of marriage was not adultery, it was an affair. And of course, there was different kinds of expressions of sexuality, from homosexuality to bisexuality and everything in between. Of course, I'm speaking about today. You see, Sodom was not a place for Christians. But Lot, yes, righteous Lot, pitched his tent towards Sodom. He did not settle in downtown Sodom. Oh no, he didn't do that. The city center, downtown, that was too violent. He settled on the outskirts, the suburbs of Sodom. However, before long, the man who pitched his tent towards Sodom was living in Sodom. In Genesis chapter 14, verse 12, and I'll read, and it says, "And they took Lot, Abraham's brother, who dwelt in Sodom." The proposition has changed. From pitching his tent towards Sodom, he is now dwelling in Sodom. Sin will take you farther than you want to go. One step after another in the downward spiral to destruction. There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. You see, after frequent trips to Sodom, Lot became convinced that he should move nearer the markets. It will cut down the cost of transportation for his business. He could get milk to the market quicker. He could easily ship his wool. And of course, his business partners convinced him that in order to remain competitive, he had to move his business into downtown Sodom. Mrs. Lot probably helped convince him too. It would be easier for her to do her shopping in Sodom. There were better transportation links in Sodom. She could find gainful employment and help out with the household costs. And of course, they could be closer to their two older daughters who were already living in Sodom. For whatever reason, righteous man Lot, who pitched his tent towards Sodom, is now living and dwelling in a house, not in a tent, in a house in Sodom. He has moved from a tent, a temporary structure, into a house, a permanent structure. In fact, as I was doing research for this sermon, there are people that are scholars who actually say that he might have risen to be the mayor of Sodom. I don't know how far that is true, but that was said. Let's see some comments that Sister White says about Lot. I'll skip that for a minute, just bear with me. See, Lot had good intentions, but intentions alone will not get you to do the right thing. The choices we make have to be based on the Word of God. It's possible that we can have good intentions. In fact, the majority of us sat here, I believe, have good intentions. But our Christianity, our faith, is not based on good intentions. It's based on the Word of God. We can look back at Lot now and say, what was he thinking? Could he not see the perils that surrounded him in Sodom? In fact, when Lot was captured, because he was captured by the 5 surrounding kings, it was Abraham and his servants that went to rescue him. And what did Lot do? He went straight back to Sodom. Brothers and sisters, unfortunately there are many Lots amongst us today, making one bad choice after another. And these choices have consequences. I would like to go back to Lot's 2 daughters. On the face of it, it looked like he had managed to raise these girls in a godly manner. They were virgins, despite what was going on around in Sodom. So on the face of it, it looked like he'd done a good job. But alas, their constant exposure to immorality that surrounded them came back to haunt them. The Bible tells us that by beholding we are changed. The Bible also says that evil communications corrupt good manners. If you make the choice to surround yourself with evil, thinking it will have no influence or impact on you, it is only a matter of time before that evil will take control of your life. The same can be said if you surround yourself with righteousness. You will be righteous. Can I just talk to parents for a minute, please? Respectfully. God has blessed me recently with a baby girl. I now have 2 young ones. And put a disclaimer out there. I've made my fair share of mistakes. But we can't continue to make the same mistakes, parents. Can we, and I ask the question, just ask the question, can we continue to send our children to the schools of Babylon and think that they'll be okay? Just asking the question. It's true that in our ignorance, God winks. But I say this respectfully. This is just my personal opinion on this. I believe it's foolhardy to send kids for 8 hours a day to be taught by the agents of the devil, if that's what they are, and then expect that there will be no impact. The fact that we have family worship every day, maybe 30 minutes, maybe for some families it's an hour, that does not negate the harm that is being done to our children in a systematic way that maybe many parents don't even realize. Let me ask you another question. Who do you think is responsible for the actions of Lot's 2 daughters that they took against him? Who do you think is responsible? You can answer that, church. Who do you think is responsible? The way I see it, they have their blame, but Lot is not blameless. Because he put them in that situation. Lot had no business being in Sodom. The only reason why Lot was in Sodom was for worldly gain. He was dazzled. The definition of Babylon is false teaching. And I say it again respectfully, I don't mean to upset anybody, that's not my intention. But what is going on in our schools at the moment is false teaching. That's what's going on in our schools. Our favourite text as Adventists can be found in Revelation 18 verse 4, which tells us to come out of Babylon. That's what we say, come out of Babylon, our people. But yet still. And maybe I'm passionate about this because I've got 2 young ones. And I see what's going on. And I have conversations. And I'll show you a few slides in a minute, so you understand where I'm coming from on this. We say come out of Babylon, but yet still we hand those children every day to agents of the devil. Because again, I'm sorry to say, but that's what they are. What they're teaching our kids. If you only knew the plans that the governments have for our kids, in fact, let me actually rephrase that. If you only knew the plans that the devil has for our kids, you wouldn't think twice about letting them have access to our children. Listen to what Sister White says during the judgment. She says this will happen. Children will condemn unfaithful parents. The curse of God will surely rest upon unfaithful parents. Not only are they planting thorns, which will won't wound wound them here, but they must meet their own unfaithfulness when the judgment shall sit. And this is the bit that really got me, the bit that's in blue, that's underlined. Many children will rise up in judgment and condemn their parents for not restraining them and charge upon them their destruction. I just want to share a couple of slides with you. I don't know if you can see that. It says 80 primary school pupils a year seeking help to change their gender. This is here in the UK. This was from a charity. That's from the Telegraph. I picked this up on Monday, so this is quite recent. And the lady that was interviewed, she says at least they're getting about 80. Some of them as young as 4 years old. So these are not people that, I mean, Matthew's 3.5. Imagine Matthew making life-changing decisions, that they're being encouraged. She also goes on to talk about the peer pressure that's being put on these kids. Being told that it's okay, you can be whatever you want to be, it doesn't really matter. This has been advanced in our schools. Last week, Friday, I was at the University of Northampton. We were doing, for the graduates that had just graduated and those who were in the final year, we were talking to them about job opportunities. And so we had this seminar there and we were talking to them, and at one point I decided to go to the toilet to ease myself, and this is what I found. I had to take a picture. I just had to. That's what I found when I got to the toilets. That's what I found here in Northampton. This one, I mean, with our children, with Matthew and Miriam, by the grace of God, we would like to homeschool them. But what I recognize is that even when you're homeschooling them, the devil has a way of still trying to get to our children. About 3.5 weeks ago, the whole family, including Martin, I don't know if you saw Martin when he came up, so we were taking him back down to London, so the whole family went, and we went down to Piccadilly Circus area, and I parked the car. We're teaching Matthew that when he comes to the lights and they're green, he can go. When they're red, he can stop. And if you put Matthew in the car with you, he keeps saying, oh, that one's green, yes, you can go. That one's red, you can stop. He understands. He understands that when he sees the green man, he can cross the road. When he sees the red man, he has to stop. But lo and behold, we got out of the car and we were walking. This is what I saw. These are the traffic lights. No. So now, I'm telling you this, I saw this with my own eyes. And those who frequent London might tell you they've seen it as well. So what you had was, instead of the green man, you had the green men holding hands, or the green women holding hands. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to keep my son from what's being taught in the school, but even here on the streets of London, this is being exposed. Apparently what had happened was, I think last year they had the gay pride or some kind of pride march in and around Piccadilly Circus. In order to honour them, they changed all the lights in that area. That was in 2018, but they left it. So that's the standard lights you would get. You know, it's crazy what is going on. And again, parents, I just say respectfully, look after your children, you know. And I understand that not every family would be able to homeschool their kids. But even if you can't do that, make sure you spend time with your kids. We could see from the example of Lot's daughters, you know, they felt, well, Lot felt that he'd done a good job. I'm sure, because the Bible tells us that Lot was vexed when he heard the communications and he heard how the people spoke and their activities. Lot was a righteous man. Lot's mistake was he moved to Sodom. Lot's mistake was thinking that I can move into downtown Sodom and still maintain a Christian home. That was Lot's mistake. That was the choice he made. And I say to us, brothers and sisters, with what's going on, the devil is really trying to get our children. Ask any parent in here. Apart from physical damage to you as a person, the next worst thing that can happen to you as a parent is your child. Does anybody know Ignatius Loyola? Have you heard that name? Yes. He was the founder of the Jesuits. This statement was credited to him. Well, he said it wasn't credited to him, he said it. He says, "Give me a child for the first 7 years, and I will give you the man." What he was effectively saying is that if I can have a child for the first 7 years of their life, they will be a Jesuit forever. He recognized, and science backs this up as well, that the first 7 years of a child's life is the most crucial. The devil is quite aware of this as well. And he's going after young children, even as early as the age of 4. I know it can be daunting to maybe homeschool your children. Some of us don't even know where to turn to. I'll tell you a story, and I've never said this to Michael, so it's going to be news to him. When I first met Michael, and I went round to their house, they said they were homeschooling their kids. I didn't say anything at the time, but I came away. I went home and I phoned my mum and I said, there's a family that lives not too far from me. They've taken their kids out of school. What's wrong with them? How dare they do that? Because that's what I thought. But now, I say to myself, why on earth would any right-thinking Adventist send their children to these schools? A complete 180 degrees is how I've changed. Sister White says there are 2 classes of educators in the world. One class is those whom God makes channels of light, and the other class is those whom Satan uses as his agents, who are wise to do evil. One class contemplates the character of God and increases in the knowledge of Jesus. The other class is in league with the Prince of Darkness, who is ever on the alert that he may find an opportunity to teach others the knowledge of evil. So when I said that they were being taught by the agents of the devil, this was what I was referring to. Satan is going about his work in stealth mode, and many are asleep. I did say that I wanted to get this sermon done by 1. We've gone slightly over. I'll be about another 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and then we'll round up. I'm not one for preaching long sermons. But I also want to share this with you because I feel that sometimes as a church, we get complacent because we know the truth. I believe that the Sunday law is going to be passed very, very soon. I'm not time setting, I'm not making predictions. I'm aware that there was a prediction made yesterday that has failed, so I'm not in the business of making predictions. But I'm just saying that with what's going on around, our eyes need to be open. Soon, in the not too distant future, every man will have to make the choice on whom they will serve, God or man. As Adventists, because we know about the Sunday law, it is easy to assume that when the time comes, we will automatically make the right choice. Let me just highlight something. How many disciples did Jesus have? 12. We all agree on that? Yeah, because you seem a bit hesitant. He had 12 disciples. Don't need to be hesitant. Be bold. He had 12 disciples. Those disciples lived with him for how many years here on earth? 3.5. Do we all agree? Those disciples observed him in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. They were there when he performed miracles. They were there when he raised the dead. They saw him walk on water. In fact, these disciples performed miracles themselves through the strength of Christ. When Jesus was crucified and was taken, how many disciples were with him? They fled. Not because they didn't know, because he had forewarned them that he was going to be captured. They knew. The point I'm trying to get at is just because you know about the Sunday law doesn't mean that you're going to be able to, somebody said switch quickly, that's fine. Doesn't mean that you're going to be able to obey God's commandments if you haven't got the habit of doing it now. Let me just share another quotation, because I don't want it to be my words. Look at what Sister White says. She says, "The time of trouble, such as never was, is soon to open upon us, and we shall need an experience which we do not possess, and which many are too indolent to obtain." But here's the bit that I really wanted to highlight, which is in the greeny, bluey kind of color. It is often the case that trouble is greater in anticipation than in reality. But this is not true of the crisis before us. The most vivid presentation cannot reach the magnitude of the ordeal. Cannot reach the magnitude of the ordeal. And I'll just add, that is about to befall us. So if we think that it's okay and we can just do as we please and do what we want because at the time, because we know we have the knowledge, we're just going to be able to stand firm like Daniel and say, yes, we're fine. If you go to the book of Daniel, ever before there was any persecution, had purposed in his heart. He had made the choice. The Bible tells us in Revelation 13, verses 11 and 12, and I'll read. "And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth, and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." That's a piece of scripture that we're all very familiar with. Since maybe 2015, 2014, I started to take a very keen interest in American politics. Just because Dr. Ben Carson got himself involved, and I thought, what is he doing, getting himself involved in politics? And from then on, I took a keener interest. And we all agree that America is the second beast described in the scripture that we've just read. Are we all in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, even the Protestants used to believe that. So that's just basic Bible 101 doctrine. You see, we all know who that man is, right? President of America. He became president in 2016. But I'll tell you this man has done more in the last 2.5 years that he has been in office than any other American president has done in recent times to make, in quotes, America great again. What am I talking about? When Trump came on the scene talking about making America great again, I'm not sure many really understood that this was a fulfillment of prophecy. Trump has never been a religious man. He's not a religious man, never has been. But he serves a purpose. For those of you who are familiar with the United States of America, you will know that the southern states are often referred to as the Bible Belt states. In this part of America, this is where the Catholics, the evangelicals, and whatever is left over of the so-called Protestant movement are at their strongest. And they are strong supporters of Donald Trump. It's a very weird alliance. Very weird alliance. Trump has nothing in common with the evangelicals. This is a man that has been married 3 times, boasts about adulterous affairs, he has been involved with adult entertainment stars, and a whole list of other activities that are very inconsistent with the belief system of the evangelical movements. Here's the thing. The evangelicals refer to Trump as a useful idiot. When they're being polite, they often refer to him as their own King Cyrus. I don't think you quite got that. Cyrus. Cyrus was a heathen king of Persia who God used in the first year of his reign to decree that the temple in Jerusalem should be rebuilt, and that such Jews as cared to might return to their land for this purpose. See, the evangelicals refer to Trump as their modern day Cyrus. So while he might not be a Christian, as long as he continues to do their will, they will put up with any indiscretions. As long as he carries out their policies, they will continue to support him. And it wouldn't surprise me if he wins re-election. Let me tell you something that he has done, which has gone unnoticed by many. Do you know who these people are? The judges. Do you know where their territory, their jurisdiction is? That's the American Supreme Court's judges. There's 9 of them in number. He has successfully reshaped the Supreme Court in America by appointing 2 lifetime judges who just happen to be Catholics, bringing the total number of Catholic judges on the Supreme Court to 6 out of a possible 9. This is unprecedented. Never in the history of America have they had 6 Catholic, in fact, never have they had 5, never have they had 4. It used to be that Catholics didn't make it to the Supreme Court. That's what it used to be. But now we're seeing a rebranding, a reshaping. But you know what's actually strange about all of this? Is that the Protestants and the evangelicals are the ones supporting these Catholic nominations. When the Sunday law is passed, obviously it will be appealed, and eventually it will make its way up to the highest court in the land in America. And what you find is a heavily packed Catholic Supreme Court. Just how do you think they might rule? I just wanted to highlight this because the final events will be rapid. Be vigilant. Your adversary, the devil, is like a roaring lion, looking for whom he may devour. You see, brothers and sisters, we're living in a time that our focus should be on the Word of God and the Word of God alone. While the evangelicals, the Protestants, the Catholics are getting closer and closer and closer together, Adventism is going the other way. You can literally roll the dice, and depending on what church, Adventist church, you end up on Sabbath morning, will determine what kind of worship you experience. It used to be that you could go into any Adventist church and confidently know that you're amongst fellow believers. I went to a church once in London, and I was supposed to give a talk in the afternoon. and they had this worship. It's the only way I can explain it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. It really was. They don't use the hymnal. They don't use the lesson study. I mean, the drums. That was something else. But then in the afternoon, they wanted to use holy water. And they invited me out and said, Brother Michael, we thank you for your speech today and so on and so forth. We would like to anoint you. And I stood there. I was looking at Chi Chi and she was looking at me and I didn't know what to do. And I was stood there. And later, I realized she was praying. I was praying. God, don't let these men put their hands on me. And I stood there. And as God would have it, they walked right up to me, but they stood off me. And in quotes, they prayed. And this was in an Adventist church here in the UK. So the point I'm just trying to make is that while we are drifting further and further apart, and we're arguing about doctrines and whatever else we're arguing about, they are coming closer and closer and closer together. I would like to leave you with the words of Joshua. And he says this: choose you this day who you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Amen.